in the studio today. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be here.
Appreciate you. We have talked on the show many times about the rift, I'll call it a rift, between you and State Senator Brent Taylor. Gosh, I drew a blank there.
That's okay.
How soon you forget?
Yeah.
But it's not just him. You know, it's a lot of state Republicans as well. And it's just, to me, a battle of ideology. You know, you are a proud...
By the way, he's the only one that's currently publicly, explicitly calling for removal.
Okay, we'll get to that. Yeah. But you have this classic battle of ideology. You're a proud liberal, and people perceive that as being soft on crime. Republicans are conservatives, generally speaking, and are considered law and order types. How would you describe to the viewer watching today how your philosophy, ideology helps in the battle against crime?
Well, Richard, from the get-go, from the very beginning of the campaign and up until today, I have talked about refocusing on violent crime and violent crime being a priority. And that is, in fact, what we've been doing in the DA's office. Our prosecutors are in the courts every day pushing for significant penalties for those who commit violent crime. We have that V11 initiative that I've been talking about for a while now, where we've identified 11 violent or violent-associated crimes for special priority. We're being tougher on bail for them. We're moving them through the courts quicker. We're being more robust in our investigations. And that's kind of what we do all the time. And so I kind of reject this dichotomy. I think it's possible to be tough on repeat offenders and tough on violent offenders, but also acknowledge that, you know, you need both carrot and stick, right? And so for low to moderate level offenders, you need to consider alternatives to just straight incarceration, like rehabilitation, that have been proven to make it less likely that those offenders will repeat their offenses when they inevitably get out of prison. And that's the revolving door that I think we don't spend enough time talking about, is people who go into prison, they don't get rehabilitated, they come right back out, and they repeat offend.
Okay. We were talking off the air about your efforts to appeal an ROR case in 2 cases.
Right.
It was heard on Friday, and one of those cases, the bond did get restored.
Yes.
But yet, there's still this effort, and Richard talked about it, to remove you, and Brent Taylor is still leading that. What do you expect to happen in January related to that? And do you plan to go to Nashville anytime during the session, meet with legislators, not just on that issue, but you know, DAs go up there all the time with a wish list of things that they want to have done. Do you plan to go? And if so, who do you plan to talk to?
Right. So I guess in sort of reverse order, because there were several questions there.
Yeah.
I do plan to go to Nashville. I go there every year, and I'll meet with anybody that I can, but there are several individual senators and representatives that I'm already talking to, and we do have a legislative agenda. I want to increase the penalties on those Glock switches. I want to get a little assistance regarding a crime lab. I want to make sure that adult court judges have access to juvenile court records when they're setting bail. And I want more funding for pure academy type, places, residential places for, you know, justice-involved youth. But with respect to this removal talk, look, Senator Taylor's getting a lot of press from you guys and others, and he's certainly elevated his profile by doing these constant attacks. But I guess gotta tell you, there's no there, okay? And you don't have to take my word for it. The former State Attorney General Paul Summers, Republican DA Fred Agee from a neighboring jurisdiction, and even people here in the Memphis community have all said that there aren't really any grounds for removal, because we are in the courts every day arguing for higher bail when it's appropriate for public safety, arguing for revocation of bail when that's appropriate. You just mentioned we just won on Friday in court, right? The Tyrese Ernest case. We did not agree with the ROR decision. We took that up on appeal. The $200,000 bond has been restored. He's back in custody. We've done the same thing with that case regarding Mr. Smith. We're still litigating that. We do the work when we need to do it. And I'll just tell you, in the entire history of Tennessee, Richard, Otis, there's never been a removal of a DA under that provision. Now, that provision has been used to remove judges about a half a dozen times in our 200-plus year history, but always when they've been convicted of a crime, when there's been actual evidence of corruption. If there's no evidence of gross ethical violations or actual criminal convictions, they've never even considered removal. And this would be, if they actually did it, it would be a dangerous precedent for the first time.
Well, when we're talking about Nashville, Representative Gillespie of Memphis is proposing 2 bills for the new session when it starts in January. One would forbid defendants charged with serious firearm offenses from being released on their own recognizance. The other would allow courts to consider a defendant's juvenile record.
Right.
What is your thought about those 2 bills? Can you get behind that?
Sure. On the first one, I think in principle I can support it. I think the devil's in the details. I'd like to know a little bit more about what serious violent crime means. I had read in a news article that merely displaying a weapon could qualify, and I think we ought to be focusing on situations in which the weapon is actually discharged. But I'll look into that. On the second one, I've been singing this song for a long time now. For a long time, I've been saying that adult court judges need access to juvenile court records when they're setting bail. Now, in fact, I have been working with juvenile court judge Tarek Sugarman, and we should be ready to announce this soon, for a large subsection of offenses, violent offenses, car break-ins, car thefts. We are going to go ahead and do that now locally without waiting for the state legislature. Now, I understand why we want juvenile court records to be confidential. We don't want a mistake that a kid has made to follow them the rest of their life.
Right.
When they're applying for a loan or a job or an apartment, we don't want that scarlet letter following them. But if there's a 19-year-old that's been accused of car theft, you want that judge to know that he had 3 car theft convictions when he was 16 and 17.
Yeah.
At least until that defendant is 25 to 30, we need that ability. So the answer is a definite yes on that second one.
Right.
One topic I want to switch to is this whole question about a crime lab for Memphis. And one of the topics that's come up in building one in Memphis, which Nashville has, Memphis does not.
Yes.
We have to send our evidence to Jackson
Yep.
for processing there. But in looking at the proposal for the new crime lab, it's estimated, this was just released this past week, that it would cost $50 million to build the actual building,
Yeah.
$4 to $6 million for new equipment that would have to be purchased, $8 to $10 million for salaries for the forensic scientists that would be
Yep.
working there, and then the estimated total cost somewhere between 52 and 66 million. That is a tough lift, it would seem to me, at the state level.
Yeah, I think we're drawing the wrong lesson from that report, and I think, unfortunately, this framing is unfortunate. What they're talking about is if you want the Cadillac level of a full-service crime lab and you want to build it from scratch and not use anything existing, right? Mm-hmm. I think the report itself indicated that there are some intermediate steps that are quicker and cheaper that could be made and should be made that would vastly expand our forensic capability. And 2 of them that are mentioned in the reports are ones that I have been banging the drum on for a long time. We need expanded cell phone ability, because every crime that is committed,
There's a cell phone connected
the defendant
cell phone.
has one of these things, and it's a treasure trove of information, and also what they call rapid DNA. The report talks about that. That does not take forever. It does not take a fortune. It can be done on a short to medium term scale for, much less money than what we're talking
But
about.
real quick, the TBI director has testified that he really does not think it's necessary. Memphis can do what it wants, he says, but in his opinion, they're expanding the lab in Jackson. The turnaround rate is stepped up quite a bit, and they're adding personnel.
Here's what he's referring to. When it comes to DNA testing, I give them a lot of credit. TBI has staffed up and stepped up, and they have been significantly reducing their DNA turnaround times. What we're talking about are types of testing that TBI, through no fault of its own, aren't really doing at all, like cell phone testing in non-homicide cases or rapid DNA. So this is not TBI bashing. They're doing their best to reduce that turnaround time, and I hope they continue to do that, and good on them. We're talking about doing things that aren't really being done in this space right now, that I think there's a great consensus on, would significantly increase our solve rate, our clearance rate, and that would help with crime.
Okay, Otis, we'll let you have the final
Yeah,
question.
the final question here. One of the big stories over the last week has been that Department of Justice report
Yes.
About the police department guilty of violating people's constitutional rights, racial bias. You used to work with the Justice Department in the Civil Rights Division, as I recall.
That's right.
What is your response to the report? But even more so, what is your response to how the city, the mayor, and the police chief, interim police chief, responded to the report?
So I was hoping that the city would be open to a consent decree, because I do think that an independent monitor in that process could add credibility in terms of public confidence, right? But I take the mayor at his word that he is willing to collaborate and cooperate with DOJ and get to that place through another route. And I think there's some common ground to be found between DOJ and the city on things like improving training, improving supervision, changing the way we respond to mental health consumer calls, being a little bit more judicious in our use of non-lethal force, even if the suspect is sluggish to obey the officer's commands or talks back to the officer. There's lots of things that I think aren't going to cost a lot and wouldn't be, impossible to do, and could be done either with or without a consent decree. And I'm looking forward to seeing the city cooperate with DOJ on those things.
Okay. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for being with us.
my
We really
pleasure.
appreciate your
Yeah,
time.
thank you, Steve.
When we come back,